Leader McCarthy, it's good to see you. Remember the last time you were on, we were doing this again, and at that time, you were saying that the Democrats were loading things up for the post office, and I don't know, a lot of pork in there that you didn't like. They wanted help for hospitals. When it finally came around, I think both sides got a few things. Now we're back doing it again. You're saying, someone said that cannabis was mentioned 60 times or something in this bill, and some other things that seemingly are more important weren't in it at all. But the Democrats just want help for the states and the city. So are we going to come together at some point, or do you think it's just not needed, any add-on spending bill?
No, we'll come together. This bill was nothing of that. I mean, you spend all your time talking about jobs. Well, if you read that bill, it mentioned cannabis more than it ever mentioned jobs. Much of that bill was about legislation that Democrats have wished and tried to pass in the House long before COVID ever came around. It was about pot, it was about prisoners, it was about election law changes, it was about illegal immigrants, and then at the worst part is about pensions. So, I mean, it wasn't dealing with COVID itself. It didn't go through any committees. No one had any input into it, and it was the largest bill ever voted on. So they knew it was a political, just a political point they wanted to make. I'm not sure why they did it. Much as when I'm not sure why Nancy Pelosi would hold up all the other bipartisan bills. But it's another political game being played. Today I will sit down with the Vice President, sit down with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and Leader McConnell. We'll do that this morning, looking at ways of where we can work together to move forward on what we do need. Because it's not just $3 trillion we passed in the House. Remember, you have the Fed somewhere about $4 to $5 trillion when you leverage that. Let's make sure that's all implemented into the economy before we just start drafting something. And let's draft something that actually has meaning inside. Liability protection would be the #1 thing I would look at.
Liability, that's going to be a tough one, though. I saw Senator Schumer just say, I don't know, he, in his own inimitable fashion, he made it out to be something that just a fat cat CEO would like, that it made no mention that, I don't know how many lawyers are lined up at this point. They're just ready to go. It's going to be like the floodgates are going to be open before anything's even happened.
They're already advertising, and it's not about, it's really small business they go after. They go after colleges, they go after school districts. There's more than 700 suits already. Remember, in our very first bill, we tried to get liability protection for 3M just so they could sell millions of more masks to the medical community, and the Democrats said no. It wasn't until the second bill where we finally able to break them to get the protection for one individual company for some PPE, personal protection equipment of masks, even though we were dealing with COVID at that time. So yes, Democrats will hold true to the trial lawyers, even in a COVID situation, so it will not be easy, but no bill will pass without it.
Andrew.
Leader, wanted to ask you about providing assistance to states and municipalities. Senator Pat Toomey this morning said it was not something that he would be in favor of. Obviously, we've heard from Mitch McConnell. Where are you? And I ask you specifically because you represent the great state of California, which is going to be one that is hard hit. And I would suggest that when Pat Toomey and others have said, look, there are states out there that are making decisions about staying closed longer than maybe certain people would prefer, that's a state choice. What's your reaction?
Well, governors have certain decisions. I mean, our governor said there'd be 25 million Californians affected by this. He was off by roughly more than 24,900,000. We were fortunate in California. We have deaths just a little over 3,000. We hope that, you look at California, it's about 4 states in themselves. If we could start moving, opening up, we have provided roughly about $750 billion to states. I'd like to see more flexibility for them. I'd also like to see if there's anything more we do for states, not go through the governors, because the governors will always take their 25%. Let's go directly to cities and counties, because when you're really talking about firefighters, police officers, states don't employ them, cities and counties employ them. And let's give them the flexibility and the resources they need. And let's make sure it's just about COVID. Because I know Illinois, prior to this, their credit rating was equal to Indonesia. And so I understand that governors, especially in those type of states, are going to want to see money to take care of places that they mismanaged. And that's not the place for hardworking taxpayers to correct their problems. But when it comes to COVID, I mean, look at what we've done with FEMA, picking up 90% and others.
But, Leader, let me ask you then, would you recommend, I mean, there's going to be a budget shortfall in the state of California, as there will be in New York, and frankly, many so-called blue states. I know you're on the red side of it. Would you recommend that those states raise taxes on their citizens?
I don't know how California could raise the taxes even higher. We're at 13%. They continue to lose so many of our population. We'll actually lose a congressional seat in California. I mean, we're the 6th largest economy in the world. We used to have Toyota there. They went to Texas and others. Now Tesla, they're pushing those companies that actually want to stay in California. If you look at their state representatives, they tell them to F off. I mean, I don't understand why we would want to help individuals that push them away. But if there is a COVID expense, something that's directed because of COVID, I think that's a place that the federal government has a role. Just like that's why we've already provided almost $1 trillion. I mean, this is unheard of what we're able to do. Think in perspective. We spend roughly $600 billion in a year on Medicare. In 1 month, we provided roughly $750 billion to states. Now, if there's opportunities that we could be more flexible with that money for the states, I'm more than willing to look at that. If there's direct COVID expenses, I would look at that from a perspective of providing it directly to the cities and the counties. Just when I look at providing money to schools, I don't want to send it to the administration. I want to send it to the classrooms.
No,
that's where
Leader,
I think it's appropriate, and that's where we should look at.
Well, Leader, when you were trying to get that first bill passed, and there was some question, I thought some on the Republican side were ready for some proxy voting. Now, you say this would give, I guess, Speaker Pelosi introduced a bill. You say that's bad. It would give her more power. You don't want that people deserve representation in person. You don't like this?
Well, let's put it in perspective of what our founders believed in. They believed the constituents would loan their power every 2 years to an individual to have a voice for them. And it was about 435 would make up of Congress. Well, today, 20 people inside Congress have all the power. Because what the Democrats did was put all the power where a proxy vote, where you would give your vote to somebody else. They could hold 10 proxies. So 20 people on the Democrat side can decide everything that happens. How do those across this nation, the millions of people who loan their voice to somebody else to hold them accountable, how can they hold them accountable? How can Congress pass a $3 trillion bill where no one was able to see it on the Republican or Democrat side, that was written just inside Speaker's office? It never went through committee. There was no challenges. That's how you end up with a bill that is more cash for cannabis than actually dealing with COVID.
Okay.
That's the problem that we have, and I don't know why someone would celebrate that.
Leader, while we have you here, you're
Sure.
outspoken about China as well. I just want to get some more comments on that, because most people that we speak to, they're saying, down the road, we got to deal with a lot of these issues, but right now is probably not the time. How do you, I mean, the president, you talked to him about it. Is it still a priority, the second phase of the trade deal? Will the first phase actually happen? Is that something to abandon at this point because we're not getting along on both sides?
Look, if it not now, when? I just was in this weekend at Camp David with the president. This was one of the discussions that we had. But think for one moment, it's not just because of this virus. More than a year ago, I went to the Speaker and asked, could we have a bipartisan committee, equal number of Republicans and Democrats, to talk about China? Because I don't want a Republican strategy or a Democrat strategy. I want an American strategy for the next century. And as we sit back and look at this virus, prior to this virus, one of the top professors of Harvard was arrested by the FBI because he was on the payroll of China. We don't make vitamin C. We don't make penicillin. China controls so much of our critical minerals when it comes to an ingredients into a pharmaceutical, or when it comes to an ingredient inside a critical mineral that builds our own military. We looked at what China did about lying to the rest of the world. When they canceled their own commercial flights into Beijing, they allowed those international flights from Wuhan to affect the rest of the world. I don't know how we sit back. When I watch what they're doing to Australia today, simply because Australia, along with 100 other nations, wanted to study what happened with COVID, they put an 80% tariff on them. Why are they so afraid of what happened? Why can't they tell us who's patient number one? If they truly believe the wet markets opened this, why would they open them back up? So I don't understand. Japan is moving their supply chain out of there. I can't understand why any company would have a supply chain in China. I wouldn't move it to Vietnam. After the USMCA, I would move it to North America. What you found inside this time, we all studied Malcolm Baldwin. We all understand just in time. But if you can't move a ship, if you can't move it out, the one thing you could do is truck it like every delivery driver did every single night resupplying our restaurants. I would be in North America. That's where I would put my supply chain, and we should incentivize the ability to do that. And we should look at what they're doing in universities. We should look at what they're doing in every element when it comes to the strength of America and our ability to make sure the next century is ours. And if now is not the time, there never will be a time to do this. That's why I went forward with our own task force when the Democrats, after they agreed, pulled out in February. Nancy Pelosi said talking about China right now was a diversion. It is not a diversion. Thousands of people died because China lied to us.
Leader, let me ask you a separate question. I just want to go back to the issue of getting back to work and reopening the country, and specifically reopening the state of California, which I know you're advocating for. One of the things that's happened is you have three of the largest, most valuable companies in America based in California, and I'm thinking of Google, Facebook, and Salesforce, which effectively have said that their employees are likely and may not work from the office through the end of the year. That's going to have a huge impact because other companies are going to be following their lead. This goes to the idea of what a reopening looks like or doesn't look like. What do you tell the leadership of those companies?
Well, I think those companies are more poised to be able to work from home. They worked from home before they had a virus. Remember, you're talking about tech companies. That's a fundamentally different thing than building a car in Tesla and others. We can open in a safe manner. And remember California, how large we are. There are parts of California that are very diverse. I have a more rural area. But we're number one in agriculture for the rest of the nation. We're number two when it comes to energy production. So California is so diverse, one size doesn't fit all. But the idea that you're going to close beaches that have lifeguards and some of the best beaches in the nation just because you're 4 hours away and you don't understand it, I believe that's wrong. So let's start looking at the local community. And let's understand where we are today is different than where we were 2 months ago. Every American understands social distancing. They understand about how to treat it differently than they were prior. Yes.
Leader, do you think those CEOs are making a mistake because they are considered leaders, and what happens is you have other companies, both in the tech space and in other spaces, say, if Facebook's doing this, if Google's doing this, maybe we should be too?
No, I look at all companies could hybrid. That Congress should be hybriding right now. Why aren't we bringing back certain committees that have work to get done, where you don't have to bring all of them back? Because you'd have bigger rooms to actually have social distancing to talk. Why is Starbucks open 2 blocks from here, but the Capitol is not? The Senate is, but the House is not. We are essential, and we can show an example just like Salesforce and Google and others. They have a different capability of working from home, but I do believe they'll still have people coming in to the campuses as well. Well, you know what? This campus should open. It's more than just a campus, because this is the voice of America. And if the American voice cannot be reopened, how can any business open up? So I'm not looking to Google. I actually look to our elected officials to really show what's essential to get done.
All right, great. Leader McCarthy, thanks. We appreciate all the wide-ranging issues that you responded to. Thank you. Andrew.